Hello, my name is Sabrina Mejia, and this is McCarthyism.
So, it all starts in 1947 when President Truman announced the Truman Doctrine. This was the United States' formal policy to contain the spread of communism, mainly in response to growing Soviet influence after the war. This policy really set the tone for early Cold War tensions. Then, in the late 1940s, fear of communism began to grow inside the US itself. There were a few major cases like Alger Hiss and the Rosenbergs that made people believe Soviet spies had infiltrated the government. This was the beginning of what's known as the Second Red Scare. By 1950, Senator Joseph McCarthy claimed he had a list of communists working in the U.S. State Department. That announcement created national panic and basically launched the wave of investigations and accusations that we now call McCarthyism. Finally, from 1950 to 1954, McCarthy reached his peak, dominating the headlines and fueling widespread fear of communist infiltration across all parts of American society. So this timeline really shows how Cold War
even
policy
though you
abroad,
haven't committed
like
any crime or been
turned
formally
into fear and
charged with
suspicion
one,
at home.
you are repeatedly
Now that we've
questioned
looked at the
about your
background
political
leading up to
views,
McCarthy's rise,
accused
let's talk
of
about who he
disloyalty,
actually was and
and
how he became
asked
such
to
a powerful
incriminate
figure.
your friends
Joseph
and
McCarthy was a
associates.
senator from Wisconsin, elected in 1946 after working as a lawyer and serving in the Marines during World War II. At first, he was a pretty unknown politician, but in 1950, everything changed. That year, McCarthy claimed to have a list of communists working inside the U.S. State Department. This claim got massive attention, especially during the early years of the Cold War, when people were already scared
McCarthy,
of
in
Soviet
many ways,
influence.
was destroyed by the power
His
of
tough,
television.
aggressive speeches and
power that in the
accusations made him a
1950s
national figure. McCarthy basically turned fear of communism into a political weapon, and that's what launched what we now call McCarthyism, a period defined by paranoia and suspicion. So now that we know how McCarthy rose to power, let's look at what McCarthyism actually meant, what it looked like in action, and how it affected the country. So McCarthyism wasn't just about one man, it became a whole movement and mindset. First, the origins of McCarthyism come from those public claims of widespread communist infiltration that McCarthy made in 1950. Even though he'd never provided real proof, his accusations grabbed national attention and triggered a wave of investigations. Then, his investigative tactics were really aggressive. He used secretive hearings and public interrogations to pressure people into confessing or naming others as communists. And of course, these tactics spread fear across the country. People were terrified of being accused.
Is as old as the American
Basically, if you knew or worked with someone accused of communism, you could be labeled one too.
And I
This
think
blurred the
populism
line
is a
between
somewhat
legitimate
dangerous force
security
because it
concerns
tends
and personal or political attacks. And finally, the political and cultural impact was huge. So, as you can see, McCarthyism went far beyond McCarthy himself. It reshaped American culture during the early Cold War years. One of the biggest was the Army McCarthy hearings in 1954. These were televised and exposed Senator McCarthy's harsh and baseless tactics, which ultimately led to his downfall. In Hollywood, the blacklist kept writers, actors, and directors from working if they were suspected of communist ties. Many careers were destroyed, and the industry became highly self-censored. During the McCarthy era, justice and fairness were deeply compromised. Civil liberties were violated as fear silenced free speech and association. Due process broke down. Many were accused without evidence or
To name the following friends of mine as members of the Communist Party.
You're just here to test the microphone.
Political power was
Red
misused
Wilson,
for personal
my brother
gain,
Bill,
twisting
Don
lawful
DiMaggio,
authority.
the Paper
In
Boy,
the end, public trust
Howdy
in
Doody,
justice and
Joseph
democracy
Stalin.
was shaken, leaving a lasting scar in American values. This slide compares basic principles of justice with what actually happened during the McCarthy era. In a fair system, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty, has the right to a fair trial, can freely express themselves, and is treated equally under the law. During McCarthyism, though, all of this was ignored. Many were detained without lawful process and targeted mainly for their political beliefs rather than any real crime. Essentially, McCarthyism flipped justice on its head. Many leaders and thinkers spoke out against McCarthyism. President Dwight Eisenhower reminded Americans not to confuse dissent with disloyalty. Journalist Edward R. Murrow exposed McCarthy's baseless accusations and the fear they spread. And playwright Arthur Miller blacklisted himself, called out the unfair trials and lack of evidence. Their courage helped turn the tide, defending truth, fairness, and freedom of thought. Studying McCarthyism today helps us protect democracy and prevent similar political persecution. It reminds us why legal safeguards and due process are so important. Joseph McCarthy's rise showed how fear can override justice and civil liberties. His tactics caused long-lasting damage to political culture and even to how law enforcement operates. Although McCarthy was censured in 1954, ending his era, the legacy of McCarthyism still influences debates today about how to balance national security with individual rights. McCarthyism left lasting scars on democracy, revealing hidden threats to civil liberties and judicial fairness. These events taught a vital lesson. We must stay watchful against political witch hunts and abuses of power that can wear down justice. Even today, McCarthyism serves as a warning. Fear-driven policies can undermine democratic principles, so remembering this history helps us defend our institutions.